Non-lethal weapons are gaining mainstream popularity due to the increasing demand for both civilian and government security. However, there are increasing criticisms about them. Critics have primarily pointed out that they are not really non-lethal but are comparable to lethal weapons. Also, the abuse being committed using these weapons primarily by government authorities are being criticized.
Are they the alternative to the lethal weapons of today?
We hope that this video will help you answer this question. Will all weapons become non-lethal? This presentation was created by Joseph Russell Timfug Eason.
What are non-lethal weapons?
These are weapons primarily designed to neutralize targets which may be people or objects but eliminates fatalities or damages. They are also called less lethal weapons, less than lethal weapons, non-deadly weapons, compliance weapons or pain-inducing weapons.
What are some examples of non-lethal weapons?
Non-lethal weapons used against people: batons, tasers, plastic and rubber bullets, pepper sprays, flashbang and stun grenades, water hoses, gas bombs, eye-irritating lasers, heat rays, acoustic hailing devices, etc. Non-lethal weapons used against objects such as equipment, vehicles, and structures: spike strips, net vehicle immobilizers, caltrops, etc. Unfortunately, a full detail of non-lethal weapons is beyond the scope of this video. We hope that we can do it in the future.
What are their advantages over lethal weapons?
Fatalities are severely limited or eliminated. They may be painful but they are very rarely lethal to their targets, unlike lethal weapons. Known fatal cases involving non-lethal weapons are due to overuse or misuse by the user and not by the weapons themselves. Destruction of objects is severely limited or eliminated. They control or immobilize targets without destroying them, unlike lethal weapons that destroy objects to eliminate their threat.
What are their disadvantages over lethal weapons?
They are not as effective as lethal weapons in neutralizing their targets. There have been a lot of proven instances where non-lethal weapon attacks have to be increased in quantity or quality to stop targets during confrontations that they endanger the lives of the non-lethal weapon user. Unlike lethal weapons that can be used for both human and non-human targets, non-lethal weapons usually require separate weapons to neutralize humans and non-human targets. For example, if the targets were humans riding in an armed vehicle, a non-lethal weapon to neutralize the armed vehicle would have to be used first, and then another non-lethal weapon would have to be used to neutralize the vehicle's occupants. In contrast, simple lethal weapons such as a gun and bullet combination would have neutralized both the human and vehicle targets at the same time, usually at a much faster and effective rate.
What is the outlook for businesses, users, and humanity?
To businesses involved in non-lethal weapons, there is an increasing demand for security products due to the growing personal and government security concerns in the areas of crime, terrorism, authority abuse, etc. The demand for security has greatly increased, as can be noted by the increase in businesses that provide bodyguards, mercenaries, armored civilian vehicle conversions, and most especially security cameras and monitoring systems. Increasing social outrage to human rights abuses in the age of social media, especially those committed by the police and the military, has pressured them to increasingly rely on non-lethal weapons to enforce their authority. The main beneficiary in terms of business is the USA, which is considered the biggest producer and exporter of these products. Police organizations are the main market, followed by military organizations in emerging and South American countries. Here are some favorable reports to the industry. On April 5, 2016, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, reported that world military expenditure totaled almost $1.7 trillion in 2015, an increase of 1% in real terms from 2014. This is the first increase in military spending since 2011. On April 2016, the market Sanmarkets.com reported that the global non-lethal weapons market is projected to grow from $5.65 billion in 2015 to $8.37 billion by 2020 at a compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of 8.2% during the forecast period of 2015 to 2020. On April 6, 2016, TheStreet.com reported that the non-lethal weapons market will see an 8.2% CAGR in 2020 led by North America. On October 7, 2016, Allied Market Research reported that the world non-lethal weapons market will reach $9,656 million by 2022 globally. On November 1, 2016, BusinessWire.com reported that the non-lethal weapons market is expected to garner $9,656 million by 2022, registering a CAGR of around 8% from 2016 to 2022. Good news indeed for the businesses involved. More importantly, these figures indicate the growing preference of both civilians and governments to use non-lethal means in settling confrontations, which is good for everyone. To users of non-lethal weapons, security protection with lesser negative social repercussions, compensation costs, and emotional guilt attributed to owning and/or using lethal weapons. To humanity, safer social conditions which will improve living conditions. As more people become unafraid of possible lethal confrontations, humanity will better interact, which will result in greater social and economic benefits.
What are the factors slowing down their adoption as security alternatives?
Factor 1. Effectiveness of lethal weapons. A large number of weapons buyers still prefer lethal weapons as they still provide a maximum guarantee that they can stop if not kill their enemies during confrontations. It is widely known that there are a lot of people who can withstand attacks from non-lethal weapons and were able to put the lives of the non-lethal weapons user in extreme danger. Answer. This problem is already being addressed by improving the quality and/or quantity of effectiveness of non-lethal weapons. Factor 2. Cheapness of lethal weapons. The manufacture of lethal weapons is a mature industry and there are a multitude of suppliers around the world who compete based on price. Answer. The non-lethal weapons industry, however, will also mature and prices will drop. Weapons buyers will also be attracted to the savings that they will get from the costs associated with fatally hurting a target. Examples of these costs include the treatments, litigations, and compensation for their targets. Factor 3. Lethality of non-lethal weapons. This is usually due to the capability of some non-lethal weapons to increase their lethality by quality and/or quantity without regard to their target's capacity to absorb non-lethal weapons attacks, which makes them more lethal than lethal weapons themselves. Answer. This perception should be corrected, as even ordinary objects can turn to lethal weapons once their quality, quantity, and/or volume is increased in relation to hurting a target. Examples: a hammer can be repeatedly used to bludgeon a victim, a pillow can be used to increasingly choke a victim, etc. Factor 4. Perceived abuse of people using non-lethal weapons. Presently, the greatest concern for critics of non-lethal weapons is that it would be used or being used proactively by everyday people, criminals, and government authorities to resolve threats, conflicts, crimes and/or oppositions, fully knowing that they will not incur severe repercussions because they have not fatally hurt their target. Answer. This perception should be corrected, as lethal weapons can also do the same by inflicting less harm on their targets. Targets can be maimed instead of being killed by lethal weapons, which has a comparable effect to a full non-lethal weapon attack. Because of their benefits, non-lethal weapons will continuously be improved until they have the same effectiveness as lethal weapons. When this happens, armies can neutralize targets without endangering targets and civilian casualties and damaging objects. Wars will be more humane and short-lived. The police can neutralize criminals and/or lawbreakers without endangering criminals, lawbreakers, civilian casualties, or damaging objects. Human rights issues will be minimized. Civilians can better protect themselves without endangering others and damaging objects. Injuries caused by accidental weapons discharge will be minimized. Violent human conflicts have existed since the beginning of man and shows no signs of going away.
Who knows if there will ever be a time when humanity will finally settle all conflicts exclusively through peaceful means. Man has used everything from nuclear bombs to his fists in settling conflicts. Man has used anything as a weapon. Non-lethal weapons are still weapons in the end, but they are a big positive step in improving our humanity towards conflicts. In closing, imagine the war in Syria. It's just another case of the complicated wars we have throughout history. The UN with all its member countries have failed to stop the war, much less ensure the safety of the civilians trapped in the war between ISIS, Syrian forces, Syrian rebels, and all the other countries who joined in. The war with all of its suffering civilians are just now common media features, and the world, we think, sadly has become used to it and may not care anymore. Would it be nice if we can use something like sleeping gas to put every one of them to sleep so we can rescue all the trapped civilians from the war? We can then let the fighters resume their war when they wake up. Sadly, this is just wishful thinking. End of presentation.
Reminder: I may be presenting you correct, incorrect, or intentionally misleading information for my benefit only. I advise you to conduct your own study and double-check this presentation. Thank you for your time. I hope you will continue to watch my other presentations. See you again later.